You're listening to the Remote Millionaires podcast, the show for aspiring and established entrepreneurs who want to create and scale six-figure success online without being chained to a job, location, or computer. I'm your host, Tom Gaddis. Let's dive in. Aloha and welcome to the Remote Millionaires podcast. Richard, how's it going, man?
G'day, Tom. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I love the shark in the background up there on the bookshelf.
Whichever way. Yeah.
I'm always like, it's that way.
So I keep the shark up there. He keeps me focused and over your shoulder, keeping an eye on what I'm doing. And I keep that Coca-Cola thing up there as well, because I think my first big employer was Coca-Cola, and they taught me a huge amount about branding and how you take a brand to market and look after it. So it's always sort of been up there, just reminding me of that.
Don't forget that, because I want to talk about that, because you brought up a good point there. But first, I want to tell listeners just a little bit about you while you're on the podcast. So Richard you're in New Zealand, right?
Yeah, Christchurch, New Zealand. So we're down the South Island. After us is Antarctica. So that's how far south we are.
Oh, wow. And I know you have an agency that you're actually getting ready to move to the States, though, here pretty soon, right?
Yeah, my wife, as talented as she is, she works for an American company, and they've given her a global role and made the terrible mistake of giving us both green cards. So we're coming to live in Nashville, Tennessee in September this year, which is pretty exciting for us. So really looking forward to it. We've been to Nashville before, and I love the States, and so I just can't wait. I'm itching to get over.
Yeah, I went to Nashville because I used to be a restaurant manager for Logan's Roadhouse, and they had their corporate headquarters were there, and I had to go there and do some training. But what's interesting about this is because you have a business, you have a remote agency in New Zealand. And when we were talking before we got on this podcast, you're like, oh, we have the New Zealand arm of the business. And it's like, that's going to sound so official once you get here into the States. You're like, oh, well, we're international, right? We're international, but that's the advantage of doing the type of business that we do. So maybe you can, I know you mentioned Coca-Cola was your first employer. Maybe you can tell listeners just a little bit about, what your past sort of work or entrepreneurial history is, and how you ended up in this kind of remote digital agency game.
Yeah, sure. Look, I started with Coke when I was 20. So they took me as a young mind and molded me. It was a huge amount of fun. It was a great company to work for. And Coke have got a lot of really good disciplines that I followed through my sales and marketing career. I sold beer for a long time. And then I sold spirits and I sold wine as well. So I was in the beverages industry for sort of 15, 16, 17 years, and learned a lot and achieved a little bit as well. Then I worked for myself. I had a couple of my own businesses, and then I sort of did some short-term contract stuff for a while before I got picked up by a currency company looking after the South Pacific. So all the islands, we've got Samoa, Tonga, Vanuatu, those places, I looked after all of those. And that introduced me to seasonal workers, where I had my own business with them, supplying them with some goods, some services, those kind of things. And it was through that I started to pick up on digital marketing and things like, websites and how to sell e-commerce and those kind of things. So I started looking at a few products and things that were around there. And it was about 2017. So I went back to just working for myself again. And then in 2019, I think, or the end of 2019, I happened upon a offline sharks presentation one day, and that was for AGM. And I thought, oh, why not? And I'd never spent a large sum of money on anything before. I'd like spend $50 here or, $19 there and stuff. And I sort of brought gimmicky things that I thought, oh, I'll make $1 million out of them, And they are that's the problem. There's a lot of gimmicks out there, but I found AGM and thought that's a really good idea for getting to reach the people I want to sell to. And so I got into that, and then I joined your private coaching and just never looked back. I mean, it's been a great ride. And the last couple of years have been a lot of fun, and it's really developed so much so. I mean, I've shut down my other business that was my mainstay, and this is now all I do is digital marketing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know you've been in our community for a while, and it's been awesome to watch your growth and the things you're doing. And for those of you listening who may not know, so Offline Sharks is our another arm of Remote Millionaires. They're two in the or one in the same. We do a lot of a Facebook group and some other stuff. Remote Marketing Agency Owners is the Facebook group. You should go check it out. But AGM that Richard's talking about is a course called Agency Growth Machine, and it's a specific prospecting method we developed where we build these community websites and we use them as a foot in the door. So Richard has exploded that in New Zealand, because how many of those community websites do you have?
I got 25.
Is that all? Just 25?
Just 25.
And you might want to come back when you have 26, Richard, then talk to me when you have 26.
I think there's actually, I've got a list of another 12 that we could do. And I think if you look at the 25, 10 of them are really what we work on, and we've propagated correctly, and we've made them look pretty and all those other things as well. There's been another 10 that have got a bit of a base layer, and there's another 5 that are still sort of just sitting there with the front stuff that we like to put up. We've yet to find the time to get round to them, but I think and sort of what I've been doing in Remote Millionaires has given that a lot more structure than it had before I come into Remote Millionaires. So, the real beauty of that is that, we've got a clear plan now, and they will all, I think by the end of this year, they'll all be looking glorious and doing exactly what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that, because when you were first starting to build these sites and things, right? Like you were doing most of the work yourself, and you were trying to do all the prospecting and do it all, right?
Yeah, and look, I think it's something that a lot of people, especially in this space, it's real easy to fall into the trap of only I can do it. And I think it's there's been so many good learnings for me in RM, as I call it for short. RM's, you don't have to take all that stress and all that time and energy by thinking that you have to do everything yourself. There's a way you can farm it out to other people and get accountability and get the job done, even sometimes better than you can do it. So there are some things you got to control yourself, but there's plenty of things you can give to someone else to do for you.
And what services do you mainly focus on in your agency?
Yeah, we're primarily focused on social media. We actually do content creation. So digital marketing for us, our lead product has been making videos, custom-made videos for customers that they then use on their social media and their websites and those things. And that foot in the door with that service, if you like, has led on to so many other things that we've done, everything from competition entries to sales funnels, to landing pages, to all lead generation, all sorts of other things that people sort of go, oh, well, how do I do this? And we're sort of, well, we can do that for you. And they're like, okay, just do it, And so it's been really exciting. The last 12 months in particular have been really exciting for that.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to watch it's one of those things where when you're building a business based around the model that we kind of teach in Remote Millionaires, a lot of times it feels like not much is happening in the beginning, or like you're moving at a snail's pace, but then all of a sudden you reach this kind of tipping point where a lot of stuff happens, right? And for you were doing a lot of the things yourself, trying to work all that out. What does the inside of your business look like today? Like who's on your team? What do you have there? And then I have some follow-up questions after we go through that.
Yeah. So I hired an appointment setter in 2020. My first appointment setter, my first hire really, Jasmine, and Jasmine sort of became a bit of a running mate and just a girl Friday. She would just be able to take everything. She's really good. She's from the UK, living out here in New Zealand, and so she's a really capable administrator. So she quickly sort of moved into more of a operational side of things for me, and kept me organised as well, because I think you've got to find if you wind up just jumping to the next shiny thing or hot-footing it to the next job or task, you kind of miss the steps you need to take to get there and do it properly. And so Jasmine was really good for me in that sense, because my wife would just not have, she did enough of it. she's not putting up with me like that anymore. So Jasmine was great. And then we sort of got to the point where it was, she had a lot of things on. She had twins, which was just wonderful. And so that really took up her time and energy last year, obviously, as it would. We sort of got to Christmas, and it was just too hard to get consistent, reliable timings and stuff out of her. So she sort of stepped back out of that role. And then I sort of thought, right, I need to replace that function with more than one person so that we're getting, better delivery. And I brought in the operating system we've got, Go High Level. I brought in a Go High Level specialist, someone who just runs Go High Level, and she's been fantastic. That was the best thing I did was go and get someone who knew our operating system better than I did, because I can learn as much as I like about it, but if it's all down to me having to learn something before I implement it, then that slows the whole process down. And if you slow that process down, you slow down your revenue as well. So, to put that person in was key. Then getting things like graphic design sorted, getting our web design team developed and set up, and then getting our processes all put together as well. So we're still probably in the need of having someone who's a really good operational head for all of that, and just sort of points and shoots. But I've assumed that role for the meantime, although I'm fast running out of time to be able to do that justice.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of really great points that you hit on there. One is, you talked about, oh, look, we're going to be using this software, Go High Level. Like, I'll just go find a Go High Level specialist to help me with that. Like that, for those of you listening, because one of the things that we focus on in Remote Millionaires, right, is not that we just don't do the work ourselves, but that we have systems and processes in place, and also the skill of hiring team members, right? Which, as you know, Richard, it's a learned skill, right? Like, it seems very scary when you've never done it and you've never tried it. And the more you do it, the better you get, to where, I remember when you were just looking for website designers and all that stuff, but once you know that skill of how to find people that can help you, like, you're able to do exactly what you just said, which is like, oh, I have a new software. Well, I know how to find and hire somebody who can help me do that. And it really takes the stress and the confidence out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then and having, I think RM's been really good for giving me that process. I was doing it beforehand, but I was doing it pretty rough and ready. Now I've got a bit of structure to go with it, and right down to things like interview questions. Look, I've got one right here from last week with my new graphic designer. Is I print out 4 pages of interview questions or things that I want to know, and sort of put a few notes on it before I have a Zoom call with that person, and go through and record it. So afterwards, I can sit there and actually assess that properly. Whereas I used to just hop on a Zoom call, have a yarn with them, and go, yeah, they'll do. And it's a bit too flippant. You've got to apply a bit of structure, especially when you're bringing people into your team. Otherwise, you're just going to get people who are, okay, whatever,
Yeah.
So,
and you're building a real business, right? You need people you can trust, and good people. Like, they're going to make your company.
Team. Yeah, and I think that makes the biggest difference. Is once you start putting 3 or 4 of those people together, the whole thing gains a lot more momentum very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and what's really great about that process too, and building a business around this business model is, again, we were talking about this before we hopped on this podcast. Like, you're now in a place where the business is so systematized and the processes are in place that you can literally have someone just come in and run that arm of the business for you while you're building out a new thing in Nashville. And you couldn't do that before, right? Like, it would have been a nightmare. So congratulations on that.
It would have just crumbled in a big heap. And I would have had really angry customers as well going, I've had to give a lot of personal assurances to the people that have been working with me right from the start. They say, well, what happens when you leave? And I'm saying, look, I'm going to bring someone in who is more than capable of replacing my function, and will actually deliver better things for you in the long run, because that's and it's a guarantee I've had to make. So otherwise, it's their businesses that we're dealing with, and they're not going to take kindly to me failing them when I've committed to a service already, and I've done so much work for them already. So yeah, it's exciting though, but it's a real big challenge, and I think.
And it's a little nerve-wracking. It makes you feel a little funny in your stomach when you're thinking about doing those things. I mean, because it is, right? Like, it's an unknown. It's you just have to, as an entrepreneur, as you are, you just have to kind of get comfortable with that kind of I'm not in the best spot feeling, right? Or like I'm working to get past this. I always feel like we're in an awkward spot in our business, that feeling kind of never goes away. Hey, one thing I wanted to ask you about, Richard, was you mentioned that you worked at Coca-Cola. And one of the things that I think a lot of people, and maybe people listening to this episode, kind of take for granted is how the experiences from whatever job or thing they're doing actually apply to the business they're trying to build, right? And you mentioned Coca-Cola really helped you kind of see how you take a brand and how you do those things. But there are lots of skills and lots of different jobs that people can leverage once they become an entrepreneur. What do you think are a couple of the bigger ones that you sort of learned at Coca-Cola that have helped you do what you're doing now?
I think a company like Coke is teaches you what a brand actually is. And how you look after a brand. There's a bit of a misconception that Coke sells itself. If Coke sold itself, then it wouldn't need a sales force of thousands of people globally. But there's a number of other things that Coke do, which you don't see them as a consumer. You do see them, but your brain doesn't register them. And it's things like that Coca-Cola writing on up there. Every 12 years, Coke changed from using Coca-Cola on their labels to using Coke. And so they switch those two words around. So we call it Coke, we call it Coca-Cola, but we know it's exactly the same thing. But they do that. They call it Coke for 12 years and then they change it to Coca-Cola again for another 12 years.
That is interesting. I had no idea they did that.
When you go into a convenience store and there's like 7 or 8 fridges, you'll find that the Coke one, typically first in flow, they like to be there. Other brands will obviously compete for that space as well, but all the Coke products, as in Coke, Diet Coke, caffeine-free, all of that, the stuff that is called Coca-Cola, right, will all be in one door. And it will, it's called a black door, and it's you put all your Coke products of different sizes in one refrigerator because that actually increases sales by 8%.
Well, see, what I find so interesting about that is like when you're looking at a company like Coca-Cola, and this can apply to whatever size business you're trying to run, they've obviously, they've thought the process through all the way from the manufacturing to when the person walks in the store, right? Like they sort of imagine the world as the customer sees it and how their product fits in there, right? And whatever type of business you're building, that's always very, very good to do, to think, to try to get yourself and your business ideas out of your head and think about your customer. When a customer comes to me as a digital agency, what are things they've probably encountered and problems they've had, like you know this from experience, Richard. A lot of people have had bad experiences with website designers. So,
this is a story I've used a lot, Tom, there've been so many cowboys in this industry over the years. And I think back to about 2004 and here in New Zealand, there were companies running around in 2004, 2005, charging $70,000 for a website. And you look at them, they're nothing but a landing page, and they're a poorly done landing page too. They were terrible, they're shocking. And every company, you had to have one. If you didn't have a website, you weren't keeping up with the modern age. So a lot of businesses got burnt, and a lot of those small to medium businesses who we deal with now, they've been burnt by some backyard, hick that's gone out and just, ripped them off for $5,000, and they've gotten nothing but something that just doesn't work, and it's poorly done. Everyone goes with it. So that's something that's really confronting for us as digital marketers. It's like, well, the people before us kind of burned a lot of bridges. So establishing trust and using rapport to establish that trust is just critical to everything you do. But being able to present yourself as an authority and also someone who is trustworthy. Credibility is everything in this game, and that's the biggest difference between using some products and using others. I think there's too many things. I've had a lot of things that I've brought out of America over the last couple of years. They just don't have the credibility to work here in New Zealand. It doesn't resonate. I can't hire a Filipino call center to do my phone calls for me, because if a Filipino rings up a New Zealand business saying, "Oh, we just want to check your business details," and they're like, this is some kind of a spam call. And they just hang up on you, So you're not going to reach a business owner by using those things. You have to find more ways of being a lot more genuine and presenting yourself with accountability and all those other things that go with it that they're looking for.
Yeah, so true, so true. One of the questions I love to ask guests on the show is like, what keeps you motivated day to day? Like what keeps you getting up? And because it can be a little bit of a grind, right? We're trying to start a business. We're trying to do all this stuff. We don't just spring forth with these automated businesses that we can, move to a whole nother continent and become an international conglomerate easily, right? Like it takes a lot of work. So what keeps you motivated day to day to put the,
I think it's the threat of violence from my wife. That goes a long way towards
it. That's a good one. The threat of violence.
You will work today. You will not go and play golf. Okay. Yeah.
That's a good one. Well, accountability, right? Like having a lot of people just really don't have accountability, whether that's your wife, your partner, your business partner, or whether that's other people in a community. Right. Like a lot of times we talk about that in the remote marketing agency owners Facebook group, right? Like we want to keep it. We want to hold each other accountable. We definitely focus a lot of that in Remote Millionaires, right? We have weekly check-ins. We have, people set their goals. Like our team helps hold them accountable. So, accountability is a huge piece, right? Of just staying motivated, right? I know, like, I want to get things done because I don't want to let Nick down, right? Like, and I know he's counting on me to do stuff. So,
Yeah, I think it's being serious because my wife heard me say that she probably would beat me. See, and I'm very lucky. I've got the support of my wife has been fantastic, and she's just gone, if you want to do that, go and do it, and she hasn't been involved in the business at all. She's sort of seen some of the things I've done and that's cool, but she just left me to it. So, which is really nice. And, but I was good support there. But I think being in the shark community, from when it started with private coaching, and offline sharks, that introduced that accountability right away. So I've always had it right from the start. It's like, hey, you've got to be there. And it also showed me the fact you needed to have the credibility that went with it as well. And so that's always been my focus. Then RM, Remote Millionaires come along, and myself and another member of RM, Norm, Norm and I have bounced off each other right from we joined the same week. And we pretty much keep each other accountable in what we're saying and doing, and how you get on with this and stuff. And I think he's proven that you put a bit of application to it. There's massive results come out of this. It's a really beneficial thing.
Yeah, it's really great. I was just talking to Norman the other day, and he's like, man, I really feel like I have a business now. Like things are happening without me and all that stuff. It's great to see that kind of stuff. Richard, what's one of the biggest lessons that you think you've learned since you've been in Remote Millionaires?
I think it's I've taken far too much on myself and not used a good process for disseminating that to other people. It's slowed my progress down.
But you think is the opposite, right? You think the more you do, the faster you'll get there. But the reality is, it actually hinders your success.
Yeah, it's a mouse wheel we hop on. It's a productive mouse wheel, don't get me wrong. But I keep on taking more and more in with me, and it slows it down. So I've got to go and do that, and I've got to go and do that, and I've got 100 things on my plate this week. But my first responsibility, and this has always been the case this year especially, is my paying customers come first. To fulfill those tasks, to get those things done, is first and foremost. Because otherwise, without that base, you're not going anywhere. And then to try and juggle with fixing technical problems that I don't have the knowledge or depth to understand, or actually to be able to correct. I've had some real issues the last few weeks finding a contractor with a very specific set of skills. And as it turned out, I ran into a guy that I built a website with. He's a different kind of tech company, but they did it for me anyway, back in 2016, 2017. And I ran into him last week and said, do you know how to fix these? He says, well, I don't, but the kids do, which is all his developer team. Calls them the kids because they're all like, 19. And he says, mate, they'll be able to do that, no trouble at all. We've actually done it in the past for other people. So that's got that's sorted out this week, which is fantastic. So you just got to keep on going. You'll find the resources you need. Just got to keep going. And I think that's something where I haven't put the hammer down hard enough at times, and I've taken too much responsibility on myself to try and get it. And in doing that, you slow your business down and you slow your growth down. So I'd avoid that if I did it all over again.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And it seems so counterintuitive. My final question for this episode is for somebody who's listening to this show and they're like, man, I really think like I could give this whole remote digital agency thing a go. Like, do you have like one word of advice, one thing that you think would be good for them to do to help them get that journey started?
Yeah, I think it starts small. It's something I've been preaching this a bit for the last year, is that we have 7 big banks in New Zealand, and 5 of them suggest that you should get a side hustle. You should get something going to make some extra income. If you want to buy your first home, then you need to find another form of income as well as the one that you're making. And I think digital marketing is a really good place for that. If you're a traveling sales rep, or you work in a retail store, or whatever it is you do, if you've got a laptop, then you have the ability to make money at home outside of your normal work hours. And you could easily make some QR codes for the guy down your street who's got an electrician's business or something, and put them on his van so that everyone can get their details of that QR code. Or, there's a lot of simple things you can do like that. And I would start with something really simple and small, and then get that going, and then look at something else, you don't have to just like try and go, oh, I've got to quit my job, I'm just going to do this full time, because you won't make any money. You will fall flat on your face. You need to build your way into it with a plan. And that's what I'd suggest is just get a plan going, build your way into it, and you'll be a part of it. And after a couple of years, I mean, my biggest regret, the only thing not a regret, but the only thing I wish had happened was that I'd found you guys, the Offline Sharks, back around 2017. That would have been fantastic. I mean, I couldn't imagine where I would be today if that was the case, But it would certainly be, it'd be a big number.
Well, I appreciate that, and that's really great advice. Like starting small, working your way into it, remembering it's a process. That when we build these, we're building real businesses, right? It's a process. Well, Richard, this has been an amazing episode. I hope you guys have enjoyed listening to it. If you have any questions, you can always check out remotemillionaires.com. Also, if you go to remotemillionaires.com/podcast, there'll be a page on this episode with some of the episode notes, possibly a transcript. I'm not sure about that yet. And any links that we mentioned for you to check out. So Richard, thanks so much. Really appreciate you being here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tom. And as I say, looking forward to catching up in the States later this year.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be awesome. And if you really enjoyed this episode, we'd really love it if you'd go and leave us a review wherever you listen to this podcast. Much appreciated. Until next time, stay safe, practice aloha, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Remote Millionaires podcast. Hey, if what you've heard today on the Remote Millionaires podcast resonates with you and you want to continue the conversation, then I want to personally invite you to head over to remotemillionaires.com and schedule your free Remote Millionaires business development call. We will analyze your business and show you exactly how to accelerate your results and build a wildly successful business you can run from anywhere. Until next time, Tom Gaddis signing off.